So we only broke the story about 2 days ago. Something very exciting happened in 2011 involving both of these guys in Dublin. And I'd love, first maybe Scott, you might take us back to 2011. You came to the Web Summit and something magical happened for you.
God, a lot of things happened back in 2011. I think this is our 4th Web Summit attending. And Shervin and I didn't know each other. Frankly, barely knew you. I was still at Goldman Sachs. And the magic began basically after the conference was over, in the evening, and everyone goes to the pubs. And the people I met in the pubs and the people I interacted with was truly magical. And there was this guy named Kevin Hartz, who I met, who has subsequently become a very close friend. He's the co-founder of Eventbrite. And there's this other guy named Travis Kalanick of this little company called Uber that I thought sounded kind of interesting and kind of cool. And the thing that was happening around this table, there were a handful of others, is it was pure dreams. We were just riffing on what should be done, not what is being done. And it was magical. And Travis and I hit it off, and it immediately became clear that there was a round that he was raising. And at the time when I was at Goldman, I was leading a lot of our investments in internet, and I said, this one sounds pretty interesting. And so in my style, and you're going to hear about a second style in a second, in my style, I proceeded to go running with Travis, meaning laps around the little green across the street from the Shelburne, Stevens Green. And I actually went out for a run and did about 10 laps, and then I get the text from Travis, hey, let's go running. I was like, oh shit, after 10 laps. And he comes out, he's like, I want to run 10, 15 laps. So I managed to do about 20, 25 laps around the green until the police made us go home. And we secured the investment at that point in the Series B. And unbeknownst to me.
So, yeah, we actually, Scott and I hadn't met yet, and we wouldn't meet for almost a year from there. But I got a text from Travis saying, are you coming to Dublin? And I said, yes, I'm planning to. It'll be, I think it was my 3rd year. And he was like, let's keep talking, because I was chasing Uber to lead that investment in the Series B. And the company was like 9,000 customers at the time. And I had fallen in love with the company and with the whole team, Travis, Ryan, Graves, everyone. And so I immediately hit the ground in Dublin, and we went for a pint at Bruxelles and walked the streets of Dublin dreaming about what Uber could become. And then that night at the Shelburne, I ran to the business section, business office, and had the front office kind of print out the term sheet, went up to his room and signed. I have a picture of signing the term sheet with Travis at his hotel room. He was in his shorts.
And at this point, neither of you had met. You might have bumped into each other, maybe in a pub crawl, but you didn't really take any notice of each other.
No, we didn't know each other until a year later. We got introduced by mutual friends. It was Kara Swisher at All Things D, and she was shocked that we didn't know each other, and we hit it off immediately, and there was a lot of chemistry, and we started talking about Uber and what it could become, about where the world was going, and we realized that we were coming together to the Web Summit again that year, and it was there that we basically, Sherpa was born. We kind of consummated the marriage.
But you know, you did consummate the marriage. What was keeping on that theme of like daring to dream? We came to Summit. We attended the events, met awesome people. It wasn't until we got in a car and we drove 8 hours to the western tip of Ireland together, and literally like our stomachs hurt from laughing so hard, and we kind of explored all the boundaries in terms of the possible, and we thought about not what is being done, but how should it be done. That we said, well, what if we did this? What if we went out and said, let's create Sherpa Ventures, let's create Sherpa Foundry, 2 totally separate ideas, and just kind of dreamt it up.
So before we get to that, you're going to take us back, and just to clarify, they drove all the way to the cliffs of Moher, which are very, very beautiful, and I told them they should really go. They drove the whole way across, and when they arrived, it was completely foggy, and they could see absolutely nothing. And then they drove back, and then the rest is history. So just take me back a little bit. You've made some, startling investments, and we'll get to those in a moment. But I want to understand, how do what's the who is Scott Stanford? Where did you come from? Who are your people?
I'm a curious kid from Indiana. I grew up coding when I was 12. I kind of just hacked my way all the way through it. I mean, when you look at somebody's LinkedIn profile, their resume, it tells a story and you get an impression. You look at Shervin's, you look at mine, you're like, oh, I get it. But you absolutely don't get it until you really understand the path, the journey that one took to get there. And I mean, I literally started as a 12-year-old coder in Indiana right when the Apple computer first came out. And a subsequent of hacks, transferring colleges, turning one job into another job, ended up holding all sorts of different roles. Helped build an internet company in the bubble. Went to Harvard undergrad after transferring from Boston College. Went to Harvard Business School. Went to Goldman in derivatives, like in a room without windows, hacking derivatives. They asked me to join the IT department. I said, no, I want to be a tech banker. So I went and did that. And so there's just this kind of, I wouldn't call it a random walk, I'd call it a hack. And we joke that I immigrated from Indiana and Shervin immigrated from Iran.
The two eyes.
You can't. You're Iranian.
Yeah. I was born in Iran, and we had to escape the war and the revolution. So I remember the bombs falling into Iran as a kid. So every day for me is a blessing, and that's kind of our philosophy, anyways. Is just don't take anything for granted. Be humble. Work extremely hard. Don't think anything's a given. But my family, we came to America with nothing, and my dad drove a taxi, ironically, with Uber. I grew up in a taxi and knew a lot about that world. And my mom cleaned hotel rooms as a maid, and they just focused on education. So me, my brother and sister, we just worked really hard, and the only thing that would make them happy was us doing well in school. So my dad would, frame every certificate, every award, and put it on the wall. Soon the wall was like filled with awards. And that I was doing it because I could see how happy they were after they would work, 18-hour days, basically.
These are the type of entrepreneurs that you kind of back. You look for all sorts. You're not just looking for the kind of silver-spooned, well-educated. You take them all comers. Bring me through. So just before, I'm going to move away a little bit from you guys in a moment, and we're going to talk about the industry in more general because we focus. So just bring me through some of the investments. You've made a huge number of investments over a very, very short space of time. It's unusual, quite unusual in the kind of VC world for a fund to come out of nowhere and suddenly raise 150 million, and especially to raise that money from a lot of kind of heavyweight insiders from the industry. Can you just take me through that ever so slightly?
I'll give one example of an investment in a founder that we backed that speaks to what you were speaking about, which is we really do believe in people are the greatest asset class. So we look for something really special in those founders and teams. And one founder that one of the biggest investments from Sherpa is Tree from Muntree. And Tree's story begins in Vietnam, and he escaped as one of the boat refugees when he was 12 years old with his little brother who was 8 years old, made it onto a boat without his parents. His parents couldn't make it onto the boat. He didn't see his parents until after college. They end up in a refugee camp in Indonesia, finally get to San Jose, California, unite with his uncle. They were very poor. He's smart, works hard, gets into MIT, and then he starts Muntree. And Muntree is essentially on-demand food that's made by amazing chefs, all centralized in one kitchen. And it's part of the whole on-demand economy thesis that we actually came up with in the pub in Ireland. Well, it's a good story we'll tell. But Tree is a perfect example of that kind of entrepreneur. We made a $25 million bet in the company.
Wow. So talk to me, if we can move away from a second from the fund, and you can always come back in a moment. I'm just wondering about, you touched on the sharing economy. This is a big theme. What's so exciting about the industry? Why so many bets in this industry?
So there's a lot of talk about sharing economy. We wrote a report on the on-demand economy, which is frankly different than the sharing economy. Both are pretty important trends. I mean, okay, let's put on the business school hat for a second. What's happening? It's pretty straightforward. Technology is allowing us to do things more efficiently than we could before. Pretty obvious. Well, what do you do with the resources, with the value that's identified? Well, in some cases you can put it in your pocket. In other cases you can make that consumer experience better. And that's a lot of what's driven the on-demand economy. This concept of having a car pick you up when you want to pick you up, I mean, that's existed since horse and buggy. You just had one sitting outside. It was cost prohibitive to do that today. Well, with greater efficiencies and greater utilization of resources, you can now do that today. So it seems quite simple when you think of it that way. And so what we do is we look at industries and we say, how is the supply chain a relic? How is it a function of a non-technical world, and how can we transform that? How can our founders transform that and move the value up front and make the consumer experience that much better? The sharing economy is, I think, a riff on that, which plays off of trust and connectivity and just simply says, okay, if people trust one another and there's an opportunity for them to transact, you don't even necessarily need to make money on that transaction, because there's so many things happening around that transaction that you can monetize, that you can make money from, that core transaction that people used to charge money for can actually be given away for free, because you can charge for the other things that have to be being done anyway. And that's what we're seeing with some of the true sharing economy markets, where it's like, yeah, let someone else use your car, but someone still needs to buy gas. You still need insurance. You still need the things around it. Maybe there's a way to build a business around it.
And I'll tell the story of the pub. So when we were here that year, we had a friend, Eamon O'Connor, who's since passed away. He was a great man. And he invited us to his estate at the tip of Ireland. He called it estate, and we were excited to go. We got that car. We drove for like 18 hours. And we get there, there's a lighthouse. We get to his house, and it's a tiny house. And it was not an estate. He was joking around. And so we get there, and he takes us to a pub, and he's driving like 100 miles per hour. We thought we were going to die on this one-lane road. And we finally get to this little pub. It's like a village of maybe 500 people. And in this pub, on the corkboard, are advertisements in this little village. And one is, hairstylist will come to you, and her number and her name. The other one was a bed and breakfast, name, number, and so on. So there were all these little services in this little village. And we had the epiphany then that none of these things, as Scott said, are new. They're not new inventions, but they're enabled by technology. And this village economy that we used to have, where we could trust that stylist, Susie, and we knew who she was, we knew her reputation, that idea of proximity within one location and reputation, which is the 5 stars and a rating like Uber, was brought back to us again. So we're only going back to what we once had. And it's enabled at scale by mobile and being able to push a button and get those services and know that the quality is also taken care of. So that thesis became one of the major ideas behind Sherpa Ventures. You look at a lot of our portfolio companies are built within this kind of on-demand economy owed concept.
And so moving from that thesis to actually the kind of broader ecosystem of startups, I know you've been doing a tremendous amount of one-on-one meetings with a lot of really fantastic entrepreneurs and startups who are here, and you're here for another 2 more days. I'm just wondering, for the entrepreneurs in the audiences, for the people in the audience, for the people trying to build companies right now, what's your advice? What does a good pitch to you look like? What's a good business? What are the do's and don'ts that every young entrepreneur should, or first-time entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur should know?
It's a great question, and frankly, one that we've had to personally contemplate and embrace, because we're entrepreneurs. I mean, we are starting a brand new venture firm. We have started Sherpa Foundry, a brand new platform company. And frankly, when we did this, we stole a page out of the playbook of our founders, right? We said, okay, we could go raise this fund on a PowerPoint deck, and we could just kind of model it after all the other funds. And we said, no, let's start with the way it should be done, not the way it is being done. And let's get out there and start making investments. Let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's invest our own money, get a friends and family fund, start raising the fund, and build the business over time. And that's a big part of what we look for in early stage companies. Somebody coming in with a true vision and a passion for that vision and can see where they want to take it. And they can take us on that journey, that mental journey. And we agree with it. And we say, wow, that's a huge idea. And you have a sense, you don't know exactly how, but you have a sense of how you're going to get there. So I would say, regardless of the company, it starts with the founder, it starts with the vision, it starts with the passion for that vision. We obviously look for big opportunities. You know, a passionate person in a small room is not that interesting from a returns perspective, so go after a big opportunity. And then that last piece, which is so critical today, given the rate at which things evolve, is can we see the seeds or even the sprout of a great product, where that vision is being brought to fruition? Is there something that's tangible you can look at? And we know for a fact it's not what the end thing will look like, but you can see inside of that initial product that's been built, that initial service, that there's something magical about it. There's something different about it. And so those are kind of some of the more ethereal things that we look for when we meet founders.
Would you agree, Shervin?
Totally. The number one piece of advice is absolutely pick something that you are obsessed by, that you have a passion for, that you basically you can't live without knowing that it's going to come to fruition, that it's going to be something that's going to exist in this world. Don't do something that feels like a job, that feels like work, because when you're doing something you absolutely love, you're in love with, and we call it kind of the love principle even in our investing, is that we have to fall in love with the company and the founders and the team. And if you don't have that love, there's something missing, and you can feel it. And that's my number one advice. Don't do something because it's something that everyone else is doing, or that entrepreneurship seems something cool that that everyone else is doing, so I'm going to do it. No, do it because you can't live without this idea coming into this world, and you'll do anything to make it come alive.
So I'm going to dwell on this point a little bit more. So we've facilitated just over about 10,000 one-on-one meetings between startups and investors. So we've got about 800 investors from around the world. We've been setting up a ton of meetings. Some startups are more fortunate than others. They end up with 40 back-to-back meetings over the course, about 10 to 15-minute meetings over the course of the 3 days here. You know, when a startup sits down with you for 10 or 15 minutes, what's the best use of your time and their time? What do they just to reiterate, what are the key things they need to achieve in those 10 or 15 minutes? Are they making a mistake if they think they can walk away with a check? Is that first meeting, is it more about check writing? Is it more about relationship building? You talked about your relationship with Travis. Getting that term sheet signed was that wasn't a one-off meeting. That was. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah. Go ahead, Sherpa. Do you have some thoughts?
I think it's incredibly important that it's rare to have something happen in the first 15 minutes. Things are a process. There's a difference between seed stage, Series A, B, etc. So depending on what stage you're at, there's more you can show in terms of metrics these days. The acceleration that's happening between coming up with an idea, executing, and a year later you could have some very serious metrics to show. And the cost for doing these things has also come down, at least to kind of get things started. So I think the focus would be in the first 15 minutes of introducing yourself. It's not to try to be something that you're not, right? You can always sense authenticity. You can always feel it. You can see the love that someone has for the idea. So if it's that first meeting, focus on who you are, focus on your narrative, your story. Where do you come from? Why are you pursuing this? Why are you in love with it? You're not going to win someone over with this incredible business model that you've invented. You're going to win someone over with your heart and soul, and you're going to show someone why, no matter what happens in marketplaces, that you're never going to give up on it. And you can feel that. That'll plant the seed of the continued dialogue.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a pitch. No one wants to be pitched. As soon as someone sits down and they start pitching us, it's a turnoff. You want to have a conversation. However, I would think about it in the context of, you know, a business book, right? A business book is hundreds of pages long. A how-to book, a self-help book. There's only about 5 pages that are 3 pages that are really relevant in terms of getting the point across. Like we all do it. Have you read X? Well, it was an interesting book because of Y. Spend a ton of time before that meeting figuring out what Y was. Don't go in there and just start reading the book. Go in there and say, here's what I'm doing, here's why I'm passionate about it, and here's why I think it's interesting. And then listen. Let questions be asked if there's the opportunity to do so. But I agree, it's not a pitch.
So you've got about a minute left. I'm just wondering, what does the next 12 months look like for you guys? What's hot? What are you feeling? Have you come across any startups in Ireland?
Not that one's based in Ireland, but there's conversations with one company that will probably lead to a term sheet. And so hopefully we'll sign it at the Shelbourne again. But in terms of the next 12 months, I would start with the arc of, you know, actually the next 20 years, 30 years. The reason why Scott and I have started Sherpa is we are so optimistic about where technology is going that all of the things we're seeing coming down the pipeline, so many transformational things are coming into our lives that are going to change culture, that are going to change society, they're going to change the quality of our lives, the length of the time we have to be together with our loved ones. All of these things are accelerating, and it's an amazing time to be alive. So from that perspective, it's a blessing to even be able to look and meet these incredibly intelligent, amazing, inspired people and have a chance to be a part of their journey.
Yeah, I would say, I totally agree with Shervin. Very long-term view. We don't think in months, frankly even years, as we think about the vision for Sherpa. It's a very long-term vision. I'd say I'll spend the next 12 months getting ready for Web Summit 2015.
Great, fantastic. Well, guys, I owe you, Shervin in particular, a huge debt of gratitude. Shervin persuaded Elon Musk last year that he should definitely come on a pub crawl in Dublin with Bono and with Shervin, which he did, and then also maybe he could fit in a tiny bit of speaking, which he also did. Awesome. So Shervin, thank you very much for that, and just really thank you to you both for all the support over the last 3 years, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Paddy. Congrats.
Thank you.
It's awesome. Thanks.